Well, as everybody always asks, is it a good week for a bye? In some ways, yes. But then again, that's tough sometimes, when things are lingering when you have a bye week. But for all intents and purposes, we did what we needed to do. I think coming off this bye week, we got reps for guys that need to get reps. We, got an opportunity to, look ourselves in the face and figure out some things that we need to do a lot better, along with, giving some guys an opportunity to hopefully get some of these, I say minor injuries, but things that can heal up within a week or two, an opportunity maybe to heal up. So I think all those things combined together gave us a good opportunity to use the bye in the best way possible. And, obviously coming off of that, as we get rolling into this week, there's a lot of things we still don't know with some guys with some minor injuries. But I know that, we used it for what we believe is the right way, to get some of those guys some time to heal up a little bit. Even the Joe Brunners of the world who've played a lot of football that, obviously dinged up his knee last week, didn't take a bunch of reps, but had an opportunity to obviously work on some things personally himself. But as a whole, more so to just say, hey, let's focus, let's figure out where we are, what we need to do. We know it's all about the process of getting better, and that's what's most important to us right now, and that's where we've struggled a little bit. But I think we used that last week in a really good way, not just for young guys, but for old guys as well.
Mark,
I guess we might as well just get the specifics out of the way as far as your big guys, Billy, Jake, Zachman, Dylan. Anything specific in terms of
Dylan? Oh no, Zachman he'll be out. He's not a guy that we'll get back just yet. The other guys, we don't know. I mean, we'll go out there today and see where those guys are. Most of those guys did not do much last week. Dylan did a little bit. I think he ran pretty well, not in contact situations. But, I hope and we hope to get all those guys back. But I think that, obviously early in this week have to be smart. But the preparation for saying, hey, hopefully we have those guys is where we are right now. It's a lot of unknowns.
Is there a lesson to be learned from the Maryland game in terms of Billy's status? I mean, do you need him to be at a certain percentage? You need a certain number of reps to him? Because the other flip side is does Danny need a certain number of reps, or whoever's going to be quarterback?
Yeah, it's it's probably the thing that lingers as much as anything. Even in the situations we've been in the last 2 years, you knew where you were, right? I mean, okay, a guy's out for 5 weeks after surgery, a guy's out for the year. The hardest thing is there's a lingering, like, how long does this last? What's best? Trying to make the right decisions, the best decisions. And that's where I put it on myself to say, I said to you guys several times, we'd have to save him from himself. And in some ways, that's probably what I would say I didn't do. I didn't save him from himself with that game, wanting to play, expecting to play, preparing to play. But the truth of the matter is he probably wasn't in a position where he was ready to play. And, that's where we got to do a better job. That's why when you ask, where is Bill, I don't know right now. And we just got to be able to see, because that's one of those things that each and every week they're better, but how much better are they? And can you test it during the week to figure out where they are, so you don't get in a situation like we did, against Maryland.
Jesse.
Look, this is a simple question with what I'm sure is a complex answer, but I don't know if you had an opportunity to evaluate this over the bye week, but how do you fix what you think the issues are to get this team to play better, more consistent football?
Spent a lot of time thinking about that. Spent a lot of time asking questions about that. I, with the group of guys that you trust to give you some good feedback. And there's a lot of things, right? I mean, the simple excuse thing to say is, hey, we got to get some guys healthy, get them in situations where obviously they give us a better opportunity to build the confidence of the things that we're doing. But I think it's all in all. It's figuring out how this whole thing works together. How do you, because I would be honest with you, on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you practice, you feel like, hey, we're getting better. We're doing the things. They got the attitudes. The performance that we've had on Saturday the last couple of weeks has just not been that. And getting and taking that transition from what we've done all week and what they've done all week and what they prepared to do, and then being able to do it on Saturday is the kind of the hurdle right now that we're at. And is that more reps? Is that what a bye week's for? Is that getting those guys the ability to work together? A lot of those things got to fall in line, but we got to make something happen. I think when it comes down to it, if you just kind of sit back and say, well, something good's got to happen. Well, you know what? You got to make something good happen. And I think as a whole for us, we have to continue to push and find ways to make some things good happen. And when that happens, you kind of see the things start to pick up from there. And that's just where we are right now. In the last 2 games, we have not been able to make something good happen, which then creates a little bit more of that momentum and energy, even within a game. So is there an exact, is there something that we came up with over, spending an enormous amount of time over the last week saying, okay, what is that? There's a lot of different things, but I think more than anything, it's still the concept of, hey, how do you continue to pound the rock of what you're doing and trusting and believing that you're going to be able to not wait for something good to happen, but be able to make something good happen.
Luke, are you anticipating any changes on the offensive line? Because you've talked in the past about the redshirt freshmen being in such a tough spot, and you've had to rely on them. But do you think any shifts are going to be made there?
We don't know right now. We've made some changes around. I think Davis has played some center this past week and did a pretty good job at that. And just trying to figure out, do we get some guys healthy? Is Jake able to go? Is Kerry Kadanko ready to go again? If they are, we have an opportunity to be able to move some of those guys around, use those older guys. But a lot of those pieces are what makes it difficult, right? I mean, even in the bye week, Joe Brunner didn't take a lot of snaps, and just so guys having to fill that spot. And so that mixture of guys playing with each other at the same time, where we've been fortunate enough to be able to do for those guys to build the camaraderie and the ability to, know what each other are doing even when it's not said, has been, obviously an Achilles heel for us right now. So there could be some changes based on, the health of these guys as we get into this week. But it's another one of those things that's just been most difficult. It's not knowing in your preparation, who are you or will you have as you get towards Saturday.
Along those lines with the offensive line, your sacks allowed numbers obviously haven't been good. You're going up against a Michigan team that has been exceptional at, kind of the opposite side of that. Kind of what, obviously aside from the injuries and aside from what you were just mentioning with the offensive line, what factors do you attribute to the issues kind of in pass protection, and kind of what can you do realistically when you can't really microwave experience with young guys?
Well, we have to be smarter. We have to be able to do what the guys can do. There's ways of, helping those guys out up front, and that's what we've got to do. It's as you get in the week, we've got to do a better job, in particular up there, of saying, okay, this is who we have and this is what we need to prepare for, as opposed to, well, if we have this guy, we can do this. If we have this guy, we can do that. And that's on us as coaches, that we have to make sure, hey, that we got to make a game plan. We got to say, this is who we're playing with. If somebody else is available, that's great, but we've got to prepare for the guys that we've got, whether they're the young guys, do what we know that they can do in a better, and then expect them to be able to play, at and above their God-given talent. And that's where, there's a combination of things that us as coaches have to do a better job of, but also our players have to do a better job of as well. And yeah, it is a strength of obviously this week of Michigan. They've done a phenomenal job the last few years defensively. They're as talented as anybody up front, even though they lost 2 first-round draft picks on the interior. There is a definite challenge to those guys up front. And, I think in this past week was something that we had obviously talked about. Not that we were getting into Michigan. It was a focus on ourselves in the ways that we can get better, but knowing what was out there.
Yeah. Luke, on the flip side, Michigan's run game against Nebraska before the bye, almost 300 yards rushing. I know that y'all have done a better job compared to last year in terms of the rush defense. But what have you seen when it comes to, kind of strength on strength there?
Yeah, it'll be a test. I don't know that we've had, by any means, a test like this in the running game this year. And so we have done a good job up front. We've done a good job at controlling the run and giving ourselves a better opportunities to obviously to win football games when you can stop the run. But this is definitely going to be a different challenge. I think that is definitely the strength of the offense. But at times when you do that, then you also got to realize and recognize that they got opportunities to make big plays in the passing game as well, whether it's the quarterback's feet, the quarterback's arm. They've got talented players on the outside. I think maybe what they don't get as much credit for is the balance that they have. It's maybe, overlooked sometimes when they've run the ball as well as they have with the backs that they've got. But it's going to be a different challenge for us defensively, that's for sure, for our ability to eliminate the big play in the run game more so than anything else.
Coach, you were pretty sure of what you had at Mason Posa. You know, when you talked about him in the early signing period, obviously you don't know until they get here. But how have you kind of just seen him, you know, attack this to get himself to a point where, you know, he's able to play as a true freshman when you're probably spending the first month or two, you know, learning on the job?
I mean, there's some young guys, especially, you know, you talk about Mason Posa. There's a guy that wasn't here in the spring, so you really didn't have an idea, and that's obviously difficult for young guys to play anyway, but when they're here in the spring, they got a much better opportunity. But he's done a great job. We've actually used him in some package stuff. Played a little bit more on the third down stuff a week ago, which obviously gave us an opportunity maybe to switch those guys up inside and maybe give some guys some rest as well. But what he does is going to continue to grow, and that's where you see some of the youth, and that's what we're got to count on, right? I mean, when you're asking how do you make some things happen and how do you get over some of these humps and how do you continue to grow and build, well, there's a lot of young guys, and where there are some things that they're tough with those young guys, you got to be able to battle through with them. And by nature, those guys, as long as they can keep the energy, they can keep the emotion, they can see the growth and the things that they're doing, they bring you energy. And I think that's one of those guys in particular in Mason Posa that has done that. He's a guy that, I'm not saying he knows everything. I'm not saying he knows most of the stuff. But the great thing about some guys like him is it doesn't slow him down. And when he has an opportunity to make some plays, he puts himself in a position and he makes them. And we've seen that in the first 4 games, whether it's been in some late game stuff, whether it's been in some crucial situations. And he hasn't made some mistakes. He came around the edge a week ago and, was a little bit out of control. And the guy got the edge on us. But I think those guys do give us some energy and some things that we need in those sparks to say, hey, we have to find a way to continue to pound this rock, but find a way to make some things happen. And by nature, sometimes these young guys are ones that can do that for us.
Luke, teams have been throwing at Rico a little bit more often than we saw last season and some more success. Is there anything that maybe he's got to improve in that after this first month of the season that you've seen? Or
in particular, Rico just needs the frustrations of things is difficult. It's welcome to the world of being a field corner, right? I mean, there's no action, then there's a bunch of action, and when the limited times you have opportunities to, maybe make a play, sometimes they don't go your way, and just the expectation of what Rico has for himself has sometimes hurts him, and he puts himself in this idea that he has to make every play, and the truth of the matter is you can't make every play. So I think it's just him calming down and playing with some poise, sticking to the base fundamentals of what he does. When the plays are there to be made, he's got to be able to make them, but he also can't get too frustrated when they don't come his way, and that's a part of growing up. Obviously, he's a mature, older guy. A couple years ago with the interceptions and the things that came his way has been something that's probably been a little bit more difficult for him because that's not as normal for a field corner as maybe happened a few years ago. But the truth of the matter is it's the little things. It's believing and trusting and being ready when those opportunities arise.
Going back to your run defense, you're facing a quarterback this week that he can obviously move the chains with his legs. How does that stress a defense? What are the challenges for a guy when you're facing a guy like Underwood?
Being a defensive guy in general, the quarterbacks that have the ability to beat you with their arms and their legs are something that always makes it difficult. And even for a younger guy that has a lot of poise, a guy that has some weapons around him, he hasn't overdone it. That's the thing that I would say is impressive. They haven't run him a ton. He hasn't, just taken off and scrambled when something wasn't there. But his ability to pick and choose when he does is obviously, as you saw a week ago for them, were some huge plays in the quarterback run game, whether it was a called cue draw or, improvised on some things that broke down. That's why I said that when we talked about the run game. You can't just say, hey, we're just going to pile the box and stop the run. You do those things, you pile everybody up inside, and Underwood can make you pay on the edges with his feet as well as being able to get the ball down the field. So there's a balance to it. That's why he, obviously was as highly touted as he is. And I think they've done a good job with being smart with what they've asked him to do, but still allowing his abilities to show. So it's another challenge that, I don't think you see every week.
Luke, one of the things that Joe Brunner said after the Maryland game was a big goal for the bye week is not letting the 2 tough weeks, 2 tough games, kind of splinter the team, as maybe happened late last season. How did you see that kind of manifest as bye week went on?
We talked about, the culture and the nature of these guys is really good. Good heart. I mean, like, they came out in the bye week on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like we practiced, and they came out with energy. They came out, did what you asked them to do. Now, a guy like Joe, we didn't ask to do a whole lot. He had a banged up knee, but it wasn't like he was over there riding the bike or, sitting on the side. I mean, he's up there probably as vocal as anybody at getting after some of the young guys and coaching it up and pushing guys. And that's the thing that, sometimes I wonder about, right? I mean, you don't see some of those things just because of the nature of, these guys still go out. They do everything you ask them to do. If we'd asked them to practice 4 days during the bye week, they'd have practiced all 4 days during the bye week. But I think that's what's going to be challenged and has been challenged and will continue to be challenged, is our ability to say, look, guys, we know we have to get better. There's a process to getting better. We have to see some of those steps to getting better, but there's no way of doing it if you can't stay together and you can't keep your mind in a going in a direction. I can always say positive, but going in a direction that gives us a chance to get better.
Luke, following up on Colton's question, it's no secret that this October stretch between the 2 byes is one of the toughest this program has faced in a while. How do you make sure these guys are able to do what you're trying to preach, especially when I think you mentioned this after the Maryland game, like, it's been tough when things don't go their way, yeah. Not to maybe sag a little bit, I'm paraphrasing, but how do you make sure this group can stay together through a stretch like this?
It's consistency, and I hammered away at it this morning with the coaches as well, right? I mean, our ability to be consistent in what we're doing, right? We can't get out of character, like I've talked about, right? Okay, stay positive. Well, there's an honesty piece behind this thing, but there's also a consistency piece that's really, really important. There's only one way to get better, and that's with consistency. And regardless of what the opponents look like, because you're right, it's a stretch, and every single one of them bring a different challenge, whether they're the top-ranked team in the country or they're not the top-ranked team in the country. Every one of them bring an incredible challenge, and that's what this business is. That's what this league is. But what's going to have to be a consistency, and I don't just mean from the players, I mean from the coaches as well. And so our ability to maintain and sustain some consistency as we continue to push and grow is going to be every bit as important as anything else.
Jeff Grimes tried a lot of stuff against Maryland. I don't know, exotic's probably too strong of a word, but he did try to get creative. Is there something to be said for keeping things simple, or is he in a position where the stuff that you guys kind of want to be your foundation aren't working? He has to try to push.
Yeah, I think there's a balance, and maybe a little bit too much is what we've kind of, probably looked at here over the bye week. You want to be able to, be creative in some ways, but you also got to find a way to be consistent. And right now, whether it's keeping guys together, it's keeping guys focused, it's keeping guys moving forward. If you don't have consistency in anything that you're doing, it's really tough. And so where you work some of that stuff, don't know that it was probably, maybe as you hindsight look back at it, maybe the time and the place for a few of those things. But, when you're not just sitting back trying to say, hey, something good's got to happen, you got to make something good happen. I understand that we get into some of those situations. And, I think that's what, the bye week gave us an opportunity to do, is say, okay, hey, how do we not just say, hey, we're going to do these 3 things, but how do you have enough balance to what you're doing, but enough creativity to still be consistent? And again, when you have what you have to prepare for, I think you got a better chance. Meaning, like, if you know who your 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 guys that you're going to be playing with, you have a better opportunity. But I think, the shifting and a lot of the different pieces that we've played with, in particular offensively, have probably made it more difficult for us to be consistent and keep some of the creativity that maybe isn't working in the best way for us.
Coach, with another road trip to a raucous environment, does it help sort of having the Alabama road trip in your back pocket moving forward?
Yeah, I think that some of those preparation things that we had to do for that, meaning offensively with some of the silent cadence and things, I think it just gives you another opportunity. You're ahead of the curve. Maybe it was late in the year last year when we actually had to work on it going before we went to Iowa, and it wasn't something we did well enough. So I think all those things add up, but it goes back to that same thing. Can you use those experiences to your advantage, whether they were a positive one or negative one, right? most experiences that don't end up in a win, by nature become a negative experience, but there are a lot of positives that you got to be able to take out of it. And I think that's where we got to make sure that whether it was the Alabama, whether it was last week or a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, a week ago, Maryland, how do you find the things, not saying, hey, let's just find the positives. How do you use those things as opportunities to say, okay, where do we need to get better? And so I think that, obviously the experience at Alabama gives us a greater opportunity, but we're going to need it as we continue, whether it's this week or as we move forward in the next few weeks.
I'll say, Luke, kind of going back to the offensive line with having like the 3 redshirt freshmen that have started or contributed, with how do you, if there are changes to the offensive line or just in general, just with 2 maybe performances you'd want back, how do you try to reconcile like not having them lose confidence if they're having bad games? How do you as a staff try to talk to them and keep confidence high if things aren't going well?
No, it's a consistency. I know. I mean, I keep using it, going back to the same thing. It's consistency, at understanding that, like, guys got to be able to get some thick skin too. I mean, they got to be able to recognize, what's in front of them, and understand and be able to accept some failures. Right. I think that's the thing. I think that the toughest thing for young guys is to be able to, let's say, accept failure, but be able to move on from failure, whether that's on a play, whether that's on a series, whether that's in a game. I'm not saying it gets any easier as you get older, but that's that competitive maturity that we've been kind of pounding in to say, hey, we're going to rely upon this in many different ways, whether that's, playing through camp on competitive maturity, staying on our feet, or being able to handle some situations that, obviously didn't come out in a positive way. And, there's not one thing, again, you can do. So you can keep talking positively to them. I think it's a consistency to how you treat them. It's a consistency to make sure they understand what the real is. And then it's the ability to keep them playing fast. I think there where, to me, the biggest issue is whether can they continue to play aggressive and play fast even though you make mistakes. And that's different for different guys. We brought up Mason Posa earlier. He was a guy that, like I said, has made some mistakes in the opportunities he's been out there, but it hasn't slowed him down. And I think that we just got to continue with a lot of these younger guys, older guys as well, hey, mistakes are going to happen, but we've got to be able to have that competitive maturity to be able to move past them.
Coach, I can't remember if you mentioned this before or after the Alabama game, but you said that the past couple of years dealing with tough losses is one of the areas you struggled with as a coach. Now, after dealing with 2 tougher losses this season, is there anything specific that you've done differently this year to sort of keep that confidence up?
No, I don't think it's just being able to put it past you. It's, like I said, in the off season, talking with a buddy of mine that, obviously is in the NFL, and in the NFL, there's a short memory, and that was not something that I had experienced a lot of. And so we say competitive maturity, it wasn't just for the players, it was also for the coaches, it was also for myself, and in the ways of saying, hey, you're not accepting a loss, but you're able to process it and move past it. And there's a maturity that has to happen that, like I said, maybe I wasn't a strong suit of mine, as well as us understanding and recognizing it for our team. But that's where the consistency has to come in my part, right? To like we talked about, to put your hand through a wall, or to lose your emotions and to bring everything out of what you're feeling inside doesn't always help in everybody around you. And so what I'm speaking to the players, I'm also speaking to myself, and I'm not saying it's gotten any easier, but it's something that I kind of going into this thing kind of understood, like, hey, we're going to have to be able to handle these situations however they arise.